let's talk scientifically, because I know people want to know the facts. And I've just prepared something here, which I'd like to share with you. If we can start off with that. So, do EMFs cause cancer? How to protect yourself? So, first question is, what causes cancer? So, the commonly held belief is that cancer is a result of genetic damage. But the alternative theory, which is certainly growing in support, is that it's mitochondrial damage and dysfunction which are the primary causes of the genetic damage, which is observed in most cancers. And a great resource on that is a book by a gentleman called Professor Thomas Seyfried, The Metabolic Theory of Cancer. I'm sure you've heard of that. So what's important here is just to point out that this distinction is actually irrelevant, because EMFs clearly cause DNA damage and mitochondrial dysfunction. Okay, so it's a kind of a chicken and egg situation, which goes first. And we have this mechanism of harm. We have this understanding now of how these EMFs from all these different devices, cell phones, Wi-Fi, smart meters, all these wireless devices, Bluetooth, so on and so forth, how this impacts our body and impacts our cells. And so these wireless exposures create these free radicals, these carbonyl free radicals, which damage so many things in our body, our DNA, cell membranes, proteins, stem cells, disrupts cell division, and damages the mitochondria. What's important to understand is that this damage is virtually identical to the damage of ionizing radiation. Yeah. So ionizing radiation, that's a radiation which everybody knows and agrees is dangerous, like gamma radiation, nuclear radiation, going for X-rays and all that. Well, what we're saying is now the result of this, all these devices which we're using, that is impacting us in the same way, and it's the same, or the result is the same. The result is the same. That's the important thing. So let's just look at your brain. So most research with regard to how EMFs impact your brain is on this RF radiation, this radio frequency radiation. So we're talking about wireless, cell phones, Bluetooth, and all that. Your brain is about 75% water, and it's very fragile. So this is why you've got the skull. That's the role of the skull, to protect your brain from bangs and knocks and stuff. But we also have this thing called the blood-brain barrier, the BBB for short, and that's another very important form of protection. This BBB has two roles. On the one hand, it's preventing toxins from getting into your brain, and on the other hand, it's allowing your brain to get all the essential nutrients it needs. And what we know is that cell phone radiation very clearly damages this blood-brain barrier. And we've known this for like over 50 years. This was research which was carried out by a gentleman called Dr. Alan Frey in the 1970s, 1960s even it started. And this damage which was observed came from very low-level exposures. And what was observed, these changes can come about almost immediately. So almost as soon as you start using your cell phone, then it is impacting your brain. So this blood-brain barrier is absolutely vital in protecting your brain, and EMFs from all these devices which we're using, which everybody is using without a second thought, clearly, as many studies have shown over the years since the 1970s, damage this blood-brain barrier and let in all sorts of pathogens, viruses, bacteria, you name it, toxins in every shape or form. which is obviously relevant given in the current health crisis. So if we look back at some of the research, okay, just very quickly, an important bit of research is that carried out in the 1990s by the Wireless Technology Research Program, headed by Dr. George Carlo, $28 million bit of research over 7 years. And this is important because it was the cell phones industry's own study. Okay, so this guy, Dr. George Carlo, he was taken on. The cell phone was hoping that to prove that cell phones were safe. Unfortunately, the study's conclusion was that there is a definite risk that radiation that emanates from a cell phone can cause cancer. Okay, those are the very words of the study. The former head of the study. Obviously, it's a former head because that was all disbanded, and they tried to smother all that and keep it quiet and that nobody knew about it. And a few people do know about it, but that's why it's important to talk about it. And then we've got these landmark studies, Interphone studies, another big multi-million-dollar study, which found that using a cell phone for just 30 minutes a day can increase your risk of getting a brain tumor by 40%, just 30 minutes a day. Don't forget, this is just cell phone radiation in isolation. And then when we add in all these other exposures, all these other wireless exposures and wired exposures, which we're going to talk about later on, then obviously that is even more concerning because, it's not just about cell phone radiation. There's a lot more going on.
We hope you enjoyed this short excerpt from the Health and Healing Club. This entire interview is available inside the Health and Healing Club, which you can try for a free 7-day trial at healthandhealingclub.com. You'll be able to access this interview and all the interviews and resources dedicated to helping you get and stay healthy at the Health and Healing Club. That's healthandhealingclub.com.